Good evening, everyone. Roots Biotech Private Limited welcomes you all. Thank you for joining us for today's webinar, taking out valuable time from your busy schedule. Roots Biotech is one of the leading provider of innovative solutions to various problems faced in the field by veterinarians. Today we are presenting digestive disturbance in dairy animals with special reference to diarrhea by Dr. Dayaram Suryavanshi, Director, Omega Laboratories. I wish to request you all to keep your microphones on mute, and if you have any questions, please type them into the chat box. Also, we will have time for questions at the end. Dr. Dayaram Suryavanshi, today's speaker, has had an illustrious career with a varied experience. After completing MBSc Pathology from Bombay Veterinary College, he was associated with Bombay Veterinary College as a professor for 8 years. He has also taken a doctorate in veterinary pharmacovigilance. Dr. Dayaram Suryavanshi has a vast experience of 22 years. Sir has carried out more than 2.5 lakh blood sample examinations and more than 13,500 diagnostic post-mortem examinations. Without wasting any more time, I request Dr. Dayaram Suryavanshi to take over. Please bear with us as I share the screen to Sir.
Good evening, friends. Today we are discussing digestive disorders in animals with special reference to diarrhea. So as Omega Laboratories, since last 14 years we are in field and did more than 2.5 lakhs blood sample examination, 13,500 postmortem examinations, and we have collaboration with multinationals as well as national pharmaceutical company, veterinary pharmaceutical companies, and we are conducting so many efficacy trials and clinical trials for the various veterinary products. Now starting with the gastrointestinal tract, the primary function of gastrointestinal tract is the prehension, digestion, absorption of water and food. Then maintenance of internal environment by modification of the amount and the nature of materials which has been absorbed through the intestine. So this is the primary function of the gastrointestinal tract. Then major ways of the gastrointestinal tract dysfunctions are the change in motility, change in secretion, change in digestion, then change in absorption. So these are the basically major four ways in which there is a disability or abnormalities can be observed because of dysfunction in the digestive tract. It may be change in motility, change in secretion, change in digestion ability and absorption ability. So these are the basic things. Then digestive system, as we know, so it consisted of mouth cavity, tongue, teeth, molar, premolar, salivary glands, esophagus, rumen, reticulum, omasum, abomasum, then duodenum, jejunum, ileum, cecum, and colon and rectum. Then dysfunction of anyone. So if there is a dysfunction of any segment of the digestive tract, will exert its effects throughout the body and throughout the gastrointestinal tract. Say for example, if the mastication, so in the mastication, the proper health of teeth is most important. Along with that, the mixing of saliva from the salivary gland is most important. So that's why the portion of mouth cavity is most important. In that, there is a chewing of the feeding ingredients, bolus, and it get mixed with the saliva. So there is a buffering action and a little bit digestion of carbohydrates can start from the mouth cavity. Then proper saliva mixing is during mastication is most important function. So it can maintain the buffer in the rumen or the acidosis or the things which are related to pH can be maintained by the proper mixing of saliva in the bolus which has been regurgitated or the which has been come in mouth for the mastication. Then negative and positive pressure in esophagus for the bolus from rumen to mouth for the rumination. So there must be the development there must be the homeostasis between the positive and negative pressure from the esophagus and rumen for the proper rumination. Then there should be the proper frequency of rumination, then proper frequency of ruminal motility, as well as the proper frequency of the intestinal motility. Any dysfunction in all these functions may lead to the digestive disorders, and we may call the different names for the different digestive disorders. So digestive disorders may be distension, maybe obstruction, maybe displacement, maybe increase in the magnitude of the peristaltic movements, decrease in the magnitude of the peristaltic movements, then change in the pH of the intestinal tract in the rumen. Then after that, well, we are looking towards the different affections in a superficial manner. I am not going in detail about the different digestive disorders, but I am going a superficial or just overview of the all the major digestive disorders. So starting from distension of the rumen, it's also called as tympani. It may be acute, it may be chronic. So acute tympani, it is generally occur because of the excess accumulation of the fermentable products in the rumen, the formation of gas, leguminous type of products in the rumen that lead to the accumulation of gas bubbles, and that we call as acute tympani. Then chronic tympani generally occur because of the obstruction, maybe because of the foreign bodies. Chronic peritonitis, in all these conditions that lead to the chronic tympani. Then the intestines may be affected by the distension. There may be the accumulation of gas or liquid in the bowel. Then the distension of abomasum is generally observed because of the either left abomasal displacement or the right abomasal displacement. So there is a distension. So the term distension generally we are using distension of rumen, distension of bowel, and distension of abomasum. So tympani may be acute and chronic. Then the intestinal bowel may be get distended because of the gas or because of the liquid. Then abomasum is get distended because of the displacement, maybe either left or right displacement. So here example of the distension of intestine. So here you can see the overall there is a distension of this particular segment due to the accumulation of the ingesta. Now distension and inflammation, generally in case of cough, this type of is get distended along with the gas and the liquid type of material. Gas and liquid type of material is there. Then enteritis. So you can see the difference between the enteritis. So as the intestine start, you can see the inflammation is there, but there is no gastritis or the abomasitis is not there. So the enteritis is another type of dysfunction can be observed. Then obstruction. Obstruction may be esophageal obstruction, maybe because of the tumor, maybe because of foreign body, and maybe because of the enlargement of lymph nodes. Then intestinal obstruction may be observed because of the volvulus intussusception, then parasites, sands, and the pebbles or the any solid material, hard material that may enter into the intestine may lead to the increase in the weight of the intestines, and that lead to the twisting, and the condition is called as obstruction. Then non-penetrating foreign bodies like plastic, then the clothes, sometimes cow can eat its own placenta, and that may lead to the obstruction into the particular portion of the body, and that is nothing but the ruminal reticular groove. So that lead to the obstruction, and the further that may lead to the tympani in such type of conditions. So plastic, clothes, placenta, these are the things that lead to the obstruction, and after obstruction there is a development of tympani. Then obstruction by lymph nodes, you can see in the mesenteric lymph nodes, they are extensively enlarged. Here all this white color are the mesenteric lymph nodes, they are enlarged here. They may lead to the obstruction, and you can see the enlargement of the particular portion of the intestine, and which is consisted of the watery type of material inside it. Then displacement, abomasal displacement may be left and right left abomasal lead to the digestive disturbances. Then displacement of intestines may be observed because of the emptying of the uterus, sudden emptying of uterus whenever there is a parturition takes place. So after parturition, there are chances of the displacement of intestines. Then if the distended urinary bladder is there, so after emptying up the urinary bladder, there are chances of the development of displacement. Then sometimes this can be true with the desi animals as well. In case of buffaloes, the jumping. So jumping from the some small ponds or the small things that may lead to the displacement of the intestines. So these things are come under the displacement. Then motility. So most of the pathology of the digestive disorders are related to the motility. Now slow waves are constantly propagated from stomach to rectum. So in the process of digestion, there must be the slow waves. They can be started from the stomach and they can reaches to the rectum. But these are the frequently well harmonized type of motility that can be observed in the normal physiological animals. When an additional stimulus causes, when any additional stimulus is there, it can causes the increase in the membrane potential than the excitation threshold. So the excitation threshold is there. So there is an increase in the motility of the intestines or the digestive tract by additional forces, and this spike or the electrical response activity occurs, which is usually accompanied by the increase in the contraction. So the smooth muscles get contracted frequently than the normal, and that lead to the increased motility of the digestive tract. So it is one of the factor which is responsible for the increased motility. Now here we can see increased movements of the smooth muscles. That may be because, so these are the external force, we can say the increased magnitude of the stomach smooth muscles. So that may be because of irritation, maybe because of inflammation, change in osmotic pressure, increased volume of ingesta, infections like bacterial infection, viral infection, protozoal infection, parasitic infections. Then foreign bodies, maybe the non-penetrating sand, crystals, and fibers. So all these things may lead to the increased motility and the peristaltic movements of the intestines. Then decrease magnitude of the peristaltic movements, that may be because of impaction, dehydration, less water consumption, excess of dry matter intake, deficiency, especially the calcium, the poisoning, chronic oxalate, then nervous imbalance, and opiums. So all these things may lead to the decrease in a magnitude of the peristaltic movements. Now here you can see a picture of impaction. You can see the dehydrated ingesta in the rumen, that is impaction. Then the debility, weakness of the musculature, severe inflammation such as occurs in acute peritonitis or trauma or infection, and handling of intestinal or the abdominal organs during laparotomy. Generally, we are conducting the intestinal surgery. In that case, after second day, third day, animal may not defecate, because the reason is that there is a development of atony because of the handling of the internal organs. So, in case of the surgeries, especially laparotomy, just we are finding for the any obstructions, intussusception or the volvulus. In that case, we are handling the whole abdominal organs, and that handling may lead to the decreased motility of the intestines, and it is one of the factor for the decrease in the peristaltic movements, and the atony is developed. Now, change in pH is another factor which can be responsible for the change in the normal digestive functions. Change in acid or the pH. So acidic pH, we can see the H plus ions are increased and there is a decrease in carbonate. In the simple language, we can say there is a change in the H plus ions concentration. Increase in H plus ions lead to the acidosis, and decrease in H plus ions lead to the alkalosis. So along with that, the carbonates are decreased in acidosis and the carbonates are increased in the alkalinity. Now, problems in mastication and prehension. So after the general overview, we can see the next part of this, the problems in the mastication, prehension, and swallowing. The paralysis of muscles of jaw or tongue. It is one of the factors which is responsible for the problems in the mastication and prevention. Then malposition of incisors. Sometimes some cattle are having the malposition of the incisors, that may lead to the problems in mastication. Then inherited skeletal defects, then displaced molar teeth, generally inherited type, that may lead to this type of problems. Then mandibular prognathism, inherited congenital osteoporosis, rickets, absence of some incisor teeth, pain in mouth cavity. Generally, that pain in mouth cavity, it is observed because of the stomatitis, glossitis, then foreign body in mouth, decayed teeth, and pleurosis. So example is a pleurosis. So the stomatitis may occur because of the so many factors, maybe the viral infections, maybe the leaking of some acids, leaking of some base, leaking of some soaps. Then glossitis, the same reason is there. Then the deficiencies are there. Then foreign bodies sometimes they can stuck into the teeth and they may act as a source of poor mastication and prehension. Then decaying of the teeth is another factor that can be observed in the old age. And one of the example is a fluorescence in the color, as well as you can see there is a extensive wearing of the molar teeth, and you can see that they get loosening of the teeth can be observed. So that may lead to the poor mastication. So another picture from the same type of animals. So here the complete wearing, you can see the complete wearing was there. The teeth are become sharp and they may lead to some of the injuries to the surrounding portion of the cheeks. So the mastication become poor. In such cases, the animals lose its weight and not eating properly. So it's a basic thing that we should see whenever animals are having such problems of prehension. We should open the mouth and observe the oral cavity for the different kinds of pathologies that we have already discussed over here. Then after that, the causes of dysphagia and inability to swallow. So generally the foreign bodies, tumors, severe inflammatory reaction in the pharynx, esophagus, then the painful conditions in the oropharynx, in the earlier esophagus or the early part of the esophagus that lead to the problem in apprehension. Then esophageal dilatation due to the paralysis, esophageal diverticulum is another factor, may lead to the problem in prehension. Then esophageal spasm are there at the site of mucosal erosions. Whenever there is a erosions because of some acids, some of the penetrating foreign bodies may enter into the esophagus, that may lead to the erosion and that lead to the spasm development of the movements, and these type of movements they lead to the dysphagia and inability to swallow the material or the swallow the food. So here you can see one of the picture that showing the diphtheritic type of stomatitis, severe inflammatory reaction. Such type of things may be observed because of the FMD, then some of the infections. Region in pharynx cause regurgitation through the nostrils or cupping. Sometimes there is cupping up of the material, and whenever such material may enter into the digestive from the instead of digestive tract, it may go to the respiratory tract, and that lead to the severe aspiration pneumonia. So that may be occur because of the paralysis, maybe the severe inflammation of the pharynx, and the animal are not able to eat or the prehends the material, or not able to push the material into the esophagus. So the sequelae of this thing, whenever there is some problems in esophagus, oropharynx, sometimes the material may enter into the respiratory tract, and in such conditions animal may die suddenly. So that can be generally observed because of the paralysis and sometimes the disability. Sometimes whenever there is a head stroke is there. So in such conditions, there are problems of the development of such type of lesion, such type of clinical signs can be observed. Then drooling of saliva. Drooling of saliva is another factor of the digestive disorders we are observing. Excessive salivation is caused by the stimulation of saliva production by systemic toxins, especially fungal toxins, or by hyperthermia. Then the excessive salivation may be observed because of the systemic poisoning. The increased salivation is often accompanied by lacrimation. So whenever there is a poisoning are there, the poisoning along with lacrimation, we can suspect that cases of the poisoning. So salivation along with lacrimation is equal to poisoning, we can say. Then local cause, local inflammation, pharyngitis, inability to swallow the saliva. So this is another factor which can lead to the excessive saliva. So just one of the example is the FMD. In case of FMD, there is a development of so many blisters. Blisters get rupture, and these ruptured blisters get infected by some spiroporus, necroporus, some gram-positive bacteria, and that lead to the severe swelling, and that may lead to the drooling of saliva. Then regurgitation is another clinical signs that we are observing. It's because of the generally regurgitation occur either through mouth cavity or through the nose. So there may be the regurgitation of feed, maybe saliva and other substances that may not reach to the stomach. So either they may remain in the upper esophagus, and sometimes they will come out through the nostrils and sometimes through the mouth cavity. In most cases, it is due to the abnormalities of the esophagus that interfere with the swallowing. So whenever there is a severe inflammation of the esophagus is there, so such type of regurgitation can be observed. So in such cases, we can suspect some foreign bodies, some paralysis of the muscles of esophagus. So in such conditions, there are possibilities of the regurgitation of material which has been taken through mouth but come through the nostrils or from the mouth itself. Then the plastic in rumen is another factor. Actually, the slide should be kept in the distension, but accidentally come over here. So distension of the rumen can be observed because of the plastic. So non-penetrating foreign body, you can see the extensive amount of the plastic has been recovered from the rumen. Then HBS or the hemorrhagic bowel syndrome can be observed in some of the animals, and you can see there is a distension of intestines along with the blood inside it, or the hemorrhages throughout the tract can be observed in the intestines, as well as distension and inflammation distension along with the blood clots that can be observed in the hemorrhagic bowel syndrome. Then inflammation and infection. So digestive tract may be affected by the inflammation and infection. So many types of infections may lead to the inflammation of stomach. So this is abomasum. You can see the severe inflammation of the abomasum and severe necrosis, as well as the edematous swelling of the abomasum is observed, and you can see some of the grits or some sand-like material is present into the lumen. So that is the another factor which may lead to the inflammation, infection. Then this is one common things generally we are observing in the cough. Whenever cough is having fever, so we are generally prescribing some NSAID drugs, and that lead to the severe hemorrhages, small ulceration into the abomasum till the complete development of digestive tract has been not takes place. You can see the milk is present over here, but along with that milk there is a tipping of the hemorrhages and ulceration into the abomasal wall. So it is because of the NSAID toxicity. We can say the toxicity of NSAID may lead to such type of things, and such cough are showing a typical clinical signs of the bellowing. The cough are continuously bellowing. So the non-stop bellowing is there. So we are giving we are considering that something is panning. So once the panning is there, again we are giving the NSAIDs, and the condition become complicated. And the coughs are very we can say they're very fragile, or they're very sensitive to these kind of medicines, and they may lead to such type of ulcers, and the conditions again increase, and sometimes there are death of the cough can be observed after giving the NSAID drugs. Now after that we can learn some of the facts about the digestive tract. Rumen can manage excess of feed by distension. So as everybody knows that cattle go for grazing, or we are feeding the cattle for 2 times. So within half an hour or within 1 hour, cattle can consume whatever food is available, or the food is offered to that cattle. So with the food, the rumen gets distended. So after that, another physiological procedure starts. So the cattle drink water, it gets soaked, and there is a formation of bolus. With the negative pressure, that bolus come to the mouth cavity, and it gets masticated in the mouth cavity, and again thrown into the rumen. Again with the help of water, the chewed portion will get settled into the bottom and will reach to the uh, abomasum finally, and from abomasum it will reach to the uh, intestine for the further digestion. Now the rumen is very tough as compared to the intestine. So intestines are very thin walled and they are having the narrow lumen. Approximately there is a about 120 feet length is there in the cattle, large intestine, sorry, overall intestines. Then rumen is tough as compared to intestines. So the things are that the rumen can manage the distension, but the intestines cannot manage the distension. Now, the neurohormonal sensitivity is more in intestine. So, neurohormonal because as we know, the peristaltic movements are based on the neurohormonal. Okay? Simply, in the simple language, we can say electric conductivity is there, and through the electric conductivity, there is a continuous peristaltic movements are going on, and that can passes the ingesta from the abomasum to the rectum, and throughout the process, there are different segments of intestines involved in the either secretion and absorption of the various types. More sensitive than the rumen. Rumen can manage the tympani for 8 days, 10 days, 20 days. So rumen can manage, but the intestines cannot manage that kind of things. So that's why the rumen is considered as a very tough as compared to the intestines. So here we can see different types of cells which are involved in the procedure of the digestion. So here you can see the esophagus, there is a flat type of cells in abomasum. There are secretory type of cells are there in the abomasum. Duodenum, you can see there is the pillars like things are there. So there is the absorption as well as the secretion, absorption of the material, secretion of materials. So important things can be absorbed. Some sort of enzymatic reaction takes place. There is a release of some material from the pancreas. So comparatively, you can see the villi. Then the villi of the jejuns are little bit taller than the duodenum. Then ileum, the flattening is more for the more absorption, and colon and rectum. Rectum and colon, there is a less absorption of nutrients, but the more absorption of water can be observed in the rectum and colon. That's why sometimes we are giving the fluids by the per rectal examination. Per rectal route. So another route of the administration of the fluid is the per rectal. So by per rectally, the more water can be absorbed. So in case of severe dehydration cases, along with the intravenous, if we give water, saline and the water, we can say, or the fluids by rectal route, it can be absorbed very fastly. So the rectum and colon can absorb more water as compared to the nutrients. But the maximum nutrients can be absorbed from the duodenum, jejunum, and ileum. Now cells of the segments. So if we see the single segment of the intestine, it is consisted of the various type of cells. Those cells are present in the blood. So the same thing, the RBCs are there, then the WBCs are there, then neutrophils are there, macrophages are there, and the comparatively the fibroblasts, they can be present into the part of the intestines. So there is a presence of lymphatics. So collectively, all these structures are responsible for the activeness of the intestinal part, the absorption, transmission of the material, and the transmission of fat we can say. So because the fat is get absorbed from the villi, will go to the lymphatics, and from lymphatics then it will go to the general circulation. Then in case of inflammation, it is true in all inflammation that can be observed. So in the inflammatory reaction, we can see there is involvement of macrophages, mast cells, neutrophils, and lymphocytes. Depending upon the type of bacteria, type of etiological factors, there is the involvement of different types of cells. So mast cells, macrophages, neutrophils, and lymphocytes. So there are secreting so many types of interleukins. We can say interleukin 1, interleukin 8, then interferon gamma, then the interstitial stimulation factors are there. So all these things lead to the or they are taking active part in the inflammation. So I'm not going in detail about this, but as an overview, we should consider this, that the different cells are involved in the inflammatory process. And so clinically we are not able to identify the which type of things are there, but to understand diarrhea in better language, so it is must that we must know the what are the different cells or the inflammatory process that can be takes place in the intestinal wall. So here if you see in the capillary, so depending upon the etiological factor, there is a fragmentation or the migration of the different types of cells. If the parasites are there, you can see in the parasites, eosinophils will be more released into the intestinal tract or in the mucosa. So eosinophilic chemotaxis, neutrophilic chemotaxis is there, leukocytic adherence is there, the monocytic chemotaxis. So depending upon the etiological factors, there are change in the different types of cells. So in case of blood examination, if we are observing more eosinophils in the general circulation, generally we are considering that these animals are suffering from some parasitic infections or infestation. So in the simple language, whenever there is a chemotaxis of the eosinophils, that may lead to the increase in eosinophils at the intestinal wall, and if we are taking blood from that, we can say that this animal is suspected from some parasitic infestation. So in the same fashion, the such type of inflammatory reaction can be takes place, and we are just judging the type of infection just observing the blood smear examinations. Now, after looking towards the taking overview of the different types of the malfunctions and dysfunctions of the digestive tract, we will go to our today's topic, that is the diarrhea. Now, diarrhea is the increase in a frequency of defecation accompanied by the feces that contain increased concentration of water and decrease in a dry matter content. So in diarrhea, generally it's watery. The consistency of the normal dung has been changed, and instead of that, more water is there and less dry matter is there. The consistency of the feces varies from soft to liquid. So in case of diarrhea, we are not getting the typical cake type of the typical layer type of feces. But in case of diarrhea, we can see the loose feces or the very soft feces or the dung material can be observed. Now, abnormalities in the peristaltic movements and segmentation usually occurs together when there is a general increase in the peristaltic activity. There is an increased caudal flow resulting in decrease in the intestinal transient time and diarrhea. So there is a typical transient time is there for each bolus. So whatever the bolus has been thrown from the abomasum into the duodenum. From duodenum, there is a continuous process of the throwing of the segment or the bolus, or ingest away in the simple language, ingesta is throwing towards the rectum. So there is a transient phase, the transient time. So for typical transient time, that bolus has to remain in the duodenum, that has been remain into the jejunum, that has been remain into the ileum. So there is a fixed timing is there, but because of the secondary factors or those factors which lead to the increase in the peristaltic movements, the transient time is get decreased. So because of the accumulation of the more water, more volume is there, and finally the transient time in the particular portion of the intestine is get reduced, and that lead to the diarrhea. Now, because of lack of absorption of the fluid, the feces are usually softer than the normal. The dry matter content is below the normal range, and the total amount of the feces passed per day is increased. So the time of defecation or the amount of feces will be increased, and the frequency of defecation is usually increased. Why we call it diarrhea? So there is a change in the frequency of defecation, change in the consistency of the fecal matter, and collectively it is called as a diarrhea. Now, there are different types of diarrhea. We can say the bacterial diarrhea, fungal diarrhea, the protozoal diarrhea, parasitic diarrhea. Then malabsorption syndrome, it can be observed because of the excess of molybdenum in the feed. Then poisoning, toxicity, then managemental type of problems. So all these problems may lead to the enteritis, and finally that lead to the diarrhea. So now starting with the bacterial type of enteritis or bacterial diarrhea. So generally calf are affected by E. coli. So calf score. So commonly the calf below 1 month age are generally affected by the E. coli, and the reason is universal, that the calf is not getting proper colostrum within a half an hour. So generally when calf are not getting colostrum within 30 minutes after birth, this type of calf are generally suffering from the calf scores, and the mortality pattern in such cases are more in case of the young animals. So the colostrum feeding is most important. So immediately after birth, within a 30 minutes, or I will say within 20 minutes, we can give colostrum to that calf and to avoid the such type of bacterial infections. So E. coli, in case of calf, it's called as calf score. But in case of large animals, there is a presence of profuse watery diarrhea. In case of calf, the pasty yellow foul smelling diarrhea can be observed in calf. But in case of large animal, acute profuse watery diarrhea, dehydration, acidosis can be observed. And for the diagnosis of the bacterial enteritis of the E. coli, we should go for the culture of the fecal matter and to identify the different pathogenic or enteropathogenic type of E. coli. Then after E. coli, the salmonella is there. Salmonella is another bacteria which are responsible for the acute diarrhea in case of large animal as well as small ruminants. The acute diarrhea, dysentery. So there is a presence of blood into the feces. Then there is a systemic reaction of the fever. Then there are chances of high mortality in case of the calf. Generally, whenever the whole paddock is infected by the salmonella, then the fecal culture is most important tool for the identification of the type of bacteria. Then Clostridium species. So here again, the severe hemorrhagic type of enterotoxemia is there. The rapid deaths are there, and fecal smear examination will help us to demonstrate different Clostridium species. No doubt, we should go for the culture also. So the Clostridium infections are characterized by the hemorrhagic type of enteritis and the rapid death. So cattle will show symptoms of the enteritis, abdominal pain, colic are there. The blood consists of feces are consist of the blood, and finally animal may die because of the Clostridial infection. So these kind of things can be observed because of the bacterial type of enteritis. Then Pseudomonas, very less commonly observed this type of infections. In Pseudomonas, foul smelling diarrhea is there. Greenish type of fibrinous flakes can be observed in the fecal matter. Then Proteus, again the watery type of diarrhea. Now the diarrhea which is of a longer type, that can be observed because of tuberculosis and paratuberculosis. So in case of tuberculosis and paratuberculosis, in both the cases, there are chances of decrease in the body weight. The hide skin appearance is there, or the very thin, or we can observe the anatomy from the outside of the animal. In the simple language, you can say. So it's because of the cachexia, the malabsorption is there, and animal is not able to absorb the material which has been taken through the mouth cavity, or the malabsorption is there. So tuberculosis and Jones disease, these are the two which are very commonly observed in the some of the dairy farms, and that lead to the diarrhea. And along with that, we can observe the typical clinical signs of the body weight loss. Then fungal diarrhea, it is because of the Candida species. It is also generally chronic diarrhea, but generally it is not giving any response to the routine type of treatment. So in that case, we should go for the fecal smear examination and demonstration of the fungal hyphae into the fecal matter, and we may go for the culture of the fungus. Now E. coli. So along with enteritis, you can see the fibrinous inflammation around the peritoneal cavity. So in case of calf, generally this type of lesions generally observed. So fibrinous type of inflammation, as we know, because of the atony, and because of the atony can be developed. Atony can be developed because of the adhesion of the fibrinous material to the different segments. So the mesentery is get adhere, and the motility of the intestines it gets stopped, and sometimes there is a ballooning of the some of the portion, and sometimes there is a peritonitis, and they generally, obviously, death can be observed. This is also another picture of the same calf. You can see there is a acute peritonitis and the fibrinous peritonitis that lead to the adhesion of the
Sir,
different portion of the
so
intestines.
really sorry to
Here,
interrupt you.
the
So we couldn't hear
mesentery,
you for the last 2-3 minutes. You were, could you repeat some? You could repeat the slide, sir, because we couldn't hear
okay.
you.
Are you getting me right now?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. We can hear you.
Okay. Chalo, I will start from once again with the, because the season is very bad over here.
Okay, sir. No problem, sir.
The raining is there going on, so I don't know what happened next.
Okay, sir.
Okay,
no
so again start with the bacterial type of enteritis. Bacterial enteritis generally observed in calf below 1 month age. It is characterized by the pasty yellow foul smelling. In case of calf, the calf below one month of the age, the fecal matter are yellow, foul smelling. Then in case of adult animals, we can see acute profuse watery type of diarrhea, dehydration, acidosis, and culture of the feces is important tool for the identification of different kinds of E. coli infection in the calf as well as in the large animals. So after E. coli, the Salmonella species is one of the species which is responsible for the diarrhea in case of the small animals or the small ruminants as well as the large animals. Then the culture of the feces is again the tool. Then Clostridial infection. The Clostridial infection is also the another factors that can be observed in the adult as well as in the growing animals. It is characterized by the severe hemorrhagic type of enterotoxemia, rapid death, and the fecal examination with the fecal smear examination will help we people for the demonstration of the Clostridial species. Now, one thing in the E. coli, so E. coli infection in calf generally observed, and the calf mortality is more observed in the calf below 1 month. And one of the basic reason is that the farmers are not feeding colostrum within 30 minutes. So I will suggest many times to the farmers that should feed the colostrum within 20 minutes. But if the calf generally born at night generally show this kind of symptoms, the reason is the simple reason is that they because of the negligence, we can say, because of the negligence, and the farmers are not giving colostrum within 30 minutes. Generally, they are waiting for the expulsion of placenta. They will not remove the milk, and they will wait for 3 hours, 4 hours, and after 3-4 hours, they are feeding colostrum to the calf. And in such cases, there are problems of the calf scores are more. So I would suggest that everybody should inform farmers that they should feed the colostrum within 30 minutes or within 20 minutes after the birth of the cattle, birth of the calf. There is no requirement of to wait for the expulsion of placenta. So the basic reason is that though after 30 minutes, there is a closing of the macromolecules in the intestines, and as we know, the size of globulins which are present in the colostrums are much more than the milk. So that's why the colostrum should be fed to the animals before 30 minutes after the birth. Now, so those calves are not getting colostrum. Generally, they become weak. They become remain stunted, and in such conditions, there are chances of calf mortality are more in the calf of below 1 month age. Then the Pseudomonas is another bacteria which is the response. Okay, sorry for interruption. So the is not here and Proteus, another bacteria which lead to the watery type of diarrhea, the tuberculosis, the chronic type of tuberculosis and paratuberculosis. These are the two bacteria which are responsible for the chronic type of infections, chronic type of diarrhea in case of the animals. So these two bacteria are responsible for the weight loss. Generally, animals are having the hide and skin appearance, So the typical type of paratuberculosis, generally pea soup type of diarrhea, and it is characterized by the long incubation period and long type of diarrhea is there. So weight loss is another clinical signs that is generally observed in case of the paratuberculosis.
So sorry
Then
to
fungal
interrupt.
diarrhea,
Sir, we can't see
candidiasis.
your,
Uh,
sir, we can't see your PPT.
oh, the the type is uh, generally and weight loss is there. In fungal area, the candidiasis, it is because of the that lead to the chronic diarrhea and generally not being response to the any treatment. So in that case, the fecal smear examination, identification of these fecals, the hyphae as well as the spores we can observe for the fungal diarrhea. Now here you can see the E. coli. The E. coli. Okay, in case of E. coli, acute peritonitis can be observed, and because of the fibrinous inflammation, as we know, the E. coli is characterized by the fibrinous type of inflammation that may lead to the fibrinous inflammation of the uh, throughout the digestive tract, and the overall the of the some of the segments of intestine, sometimes enlargement of the segment, and sometimes there may be rupture, and the calf are generally died because of the acute peritonitis. So here are the similar type of pictures. You can see the severe inflammatory conditions and severe peritonitis can be observed into that particular area. You can see the severe inflammation, extension of the small intestine. Then clostridial infections, you can see some of the focal inflammation observed into the intestines. The focal intestines having the some toxins that lead to the severe inflammatory reaction, and the bleedings can be observed in case of the clostridial type of infections. Then some of the clostridial type of infections then mixed with the giardia that lead to the such type of fecal matter. You can see the throughout feces, you can see the blood clots, and it mixed with the fecal material, generally the watery matter with the blood clots. It can be observed because of the two things combined together, Clostridium plus giardia. Then Clostridium plus parasite. It is also one of the common type of clinical sign, common type of infections or enteritis that can be observed in the animals, generally grazing and type of animals. So Clostridial infections plus parasites. So you can see the ulcer enteritis is there, or the necrotic type of enteritis. The black discoloration is because of the Clostridial infection, and you can see some of the parasites. The head of parasite, they may be present into the deeper portion of that particular portion of the necrosed area. So such type of things can be observed in the large animals. Now greenish flakes with the they can be observed in the fecal matter, that can be observed because of the Pseudomonas infection. Then this is the picture of the histopathology of the tuberculosis. You can see so many cells are having the giant cells into the submucosa of the intestines. Then Jones disease, you can see the typical corrugation of the intestines in the Jones disease. So this type of corrugations generally observed by the long-standing diarrhea of 2 years, 3 years, and after that, if the animal died because of dehydration and cachexia, we are getting intestines of this kind. Typical epithelioid cell formation can be observed into the submucosa of the intestines. Now viral enteritis. So calf below 5 to 21 days, they are generally affected by the rotavirus and coronavirus. So these two viruses can be observed generally in the organized dairy farms. No doubt they can be observed anywhere, but they generally observed in these two, rotavirus and coronavirus can be observed. Then acute profuse watery diarrhea. So it is correct. The rotavirus, coronavirus is characterized with acute profuse watery diarrhea, and demonstration of virus in feces. So for that, we should go for the PCR testing. So generally at the farm level, it is not possible to go for the definitive diagnosis. No doubt the ELISA tests are also available for that. So identification of rotavirus, coronavirus, then bovine virilaria, generally the adult animals are affected by this. Then the erosive gastroenteritis and stomatitis, usually fatal in the some of the animals. We must go for the viral isolation in such cases. Then FMD, generally the typical clinical signs of the vesicle formation. Then another viral disease that may lead to the enteritis or the GI tract infections. So bovine malignant catarrh, BMC we can say, erosive stomatitis, gastroenteritis, enlarged lymph nodes, ocular lesions. Then hematuria and terminal encephalitis can be observed in the intestines, and the transmission with the whole blood. So after that, the protozoal, Eimeria, Cryptosporidium, and Belantidium. But up till now, Belantidium was considered as a non-pathogenic. But since observing so many fecal sample examination, it was noticed that the Belantidium coli are able to cause diarrhea in case of the large animal as well as in the growing animals. So Eimeria, it is characterized by the dysentery, tenesmus, nervous signs. Fecal examination is a most important diagnostic tool for the detection of Eimeria, coccidiosis. So the coccidia generally observed in the growing animals. So the coccidia, then cryptosporidism, diarrhea, and we should go for the fecal examination with the special stain and Belantidium. I will show some of the videos of the Belantidium to you. So these are the coccidia or the Eimeria. You can see the hemorrhages are here, so the dysentery we can say. Then the intestinal tract is having the small nodules throughout the digestive tract. So the diarrhea, which is not controlled by the routine type of antibiotics, generally we should go for the fecal sample examination. Just see the direct fecal sample examination. You can observe the so many oocysts of the coccidia. Here like this, oocyst can be observed like this. So they will have the operculum. So they will have the operculum at one end. So this kind of oocyst coccidia. In case of, if you open the intestines, you will find small granular type of very long-standing chronic type of coccidia. So in case of coccidia, we can see a small granule. So sometimes people may confuse that this is a tuberculosis, but this is not tuberculosis. Just take a single noodle of this intestines, crush it, or just make a smear or get impression smear. You will get lot of coccidial oocysts from that intestinal contents or the nodules which are present in the intestines. Now, if you go for histopathology, you can see gametocytes of the coccidia. They can present into the deeper portion of the mucosa. Now, Belantidium, the Belantidium type of diarrhea, generally this type of diarrhea can be observed in the Belantidium. Here also, so generally many gas bubbles. So after dropping of the fecal matter, if you observe the fecal matter, we can see so many gas bubbles. So the empty spaces you can see here, so many empty spaces are there. That empty spaces are nothing but the formation of gas. Gas bubbles are observed. So this is a typical characteristic feature of the Belantidium coli infection, and simply with the simple drugs we can treat the Belantidium coli. So the Belantidium coli will have this kind of bubbly type of feces, and along with that we can see there's so many fibers and fecal matter. Now, the animals which are having the diarrhea by Belantidium coli, generally there is swelling. There is swelling of the perineal portion and up to the mid of the portion. Water thing is there, more water is there in the fecal matter that lead to the swelling of the abdomen, swelling of the thigh region. The Belantidium, how it looks. So Belantidium will look like this. Like a cyst, and so many vacuoles are there inside it. So in fecal matter, we can see so many Balantidium together. So this is I have shown only single type of Balantidium, but in case of diarrhea, you can see large number of Balantidium. Then next is a parasitic. So it's another common type of diarrhea, we can say. Roundworm, tapeworm, flukes, immature ampistomes. So those animals are grazing type of animals. They are suffering from the immature ampistomiasis. So roundworm, tapeworms, and flukes. So here you can see one of the picture of the immature ampistomes. So here the specific characteristic feature of general fecal sample examination, we are not getting these kind of ampistomes. So for these ampistomes has been collected from the duodenum of the in case of the dead animals. So in fecal matter, we are not getting ampistome that we are observing over here. So these ampistome has to be collected from the duodenum. So if you open the duodenum, we are not opening the. So if you are opening the duodenum, we should see the small pink dots can be observed into the duodenum, and we have to just pick up that dots and observe under the microscope. So you will get these type of movements. So can be observed in case of the grazing type of animals. So extensive large number. So they are observing. They are extensively to all of rumen. You can see the numbers, and just you can observe they are observing, or they are live, and they are taking material from the rumen. You can see some of the parasites, they are having open mouth, they are taking something, they try to take ingesta from the rumen. So these are the ampistomes that can be observed into the rumen of the animals, and you can see the huge number of ampistomes in the grazing type of animals. Then roundworm, generally after during the fecal sample examination, you can observe the roundworms. If the fecal sample has been not preserved with the formalin, in that case, the eggs get hatched. The eggs get hatched, and they can freely observe during the examination of the fecal sample examination. So this is one of the example of the larva. So that has been hatched from the egg, and it is freely moving in the under the cover slip. Then coprophagy, coproculture is another type of culture of the fecal matter, which can be useful for the research people. So you can collect and keep it into the and allow to hatch the eggs. So after 3 days, 4 days, depending upon them, able to find out the different types of larvae, and along with types of larvae, we can prescribe different types of anthelmintics. Now, tapeworms, you can see the whole segment of the intestines are filled with the tapeworms. So such type of tapeworms may be observed in the small animal as well as large animal. Then you can see the whole segment is filled with the tapeworms here also. So after emptying of that intestines, you can see the large number of tapeworms are present in the intestines. Now, after the parasites, we can see the toxicity diarrhea occur because of the toxicity: arsenic, fluorine, copper, then the sodium chloride, mercury, molybdenum, then the nitrate, poisonous plants, mycotoxicosis. These are the other type of etiological factors which lead to the toxic diarrhea. Then all severities of diarrhea depending upon the severity of this material. So how much amount has been consumed by the animal, that lead to the intensity of diarrhea. If the more amount is consumed by the animal, definitely diarrhea and dysentery is there. Severe abdominal pains are there. Then in severe cases, there is nervous signs, severe dehydration, toxemia, and the analysis of fecal and tissue. So you may go for the analysis of fecal matter for the different concentration of the fluorine, copper, sodium chloride, mercury, they all, whatever the toxins which has been mentioned over here. So the fecal matter examination, and if the animal died, then you go for the tissue examination or the analysis of the toxic levels in the tissues. Then physical factors which are responsible for the diarrhea, the sand, soil, silage, then the feed containing lactic acids. So those materials which having the lactic acid may lead to the diarrhea. Then increase that all physical factors will lead to the increase in a volume and the increase in the peristaltic movement. So here you can see there's some sand particles, some pebbles are there, different colors of the sand material is available. So this is very grossly observing the things, but generally in our practice we are, and that diarrhea will have no any parasite, no many times no bacteria involved. But if you go very careful examination, we can find so many colors, maybe the ammonium oxalates, maybe the ammonium, different types of ammoniums. They may lead to the formation of some crystals into the digestive tract, and the one of the factor for this crystal feces, we can say. Generally, the crystal urea is a term, but I don't know the term which has been given to the crystal feces. So crystal feces are there, and that may be because of the excessive hardness of the water, then the excessive oxalate into the feed contents, then the presence of the soil silicates into the feeding matter. So all these things may lead to the crystal type of diarrhea. Another type of crystals they can be observed. So these type of crystals generally observed in the animals which are having the chronic type of diarrhea, and this type of diarrhea generally not responding to the any type of treatment. So the basic thing is that we should go for the analysis of water and analysis of the oxalate of the particular farm. Then we should go to the root cause of the diarrhea in such cases. Then deficiency of the copper, then the excess of molybdenum generally cause diarrhea. Then subacute and chronic diarrhea, osteodystrophy, then no systemic reaction, hair loss, or the change in the color of the hair. So these things may lead to the diarrhea, and we should go for the analysis of the blood and liver after the postmortem. So deficiency, copper deficiency, and excess of molybdenum. Then this is the biggest factor which lead to the managemental type of diarrhea. Overfeeding, then change in feed suddenly. The farmer generally changes the feed suddenly. In one of the webinar, I have shown so many ruminal microflora. So these microflora are not able to digest the new feed. So that's why whenever there is change in feed, that lead to the diarrhea. Then frequent feeding. Some of the animals, some of the farmers, they are continuously feeding throughout the day. So morning to evening, continuously they are feeding some amount of the feed material to the animals. Then poor storage of the food or the feed. Then poor quality of water, poor cleaning practices of the water tanks and water utensils. Then here you can see the dirtiness in the farm. Then diagnosis of diarrhea, we can see. So at the field level, just we don't have so many tools with us. If you have microscope with you, so it's well and good, and you can able to diagnose so many cases of the diarrhea. So I will suggest, I will not give the typical type of academic type of advice to you people. So direct fecal examination, it's one of the important tool for we people, those who are working in the field. So take a drop of the fecal sample, mix it with water, remove the fibers, and then apply the cover slip. You will able to identify at least some of the things, at least some diarrhea cases. Then you may go for the fecal matter staining. So after the wet fecal matter examination, you can just make a smear of the same slide on the other slide, and you can stain with the gram stain, or maybe go for the Leishman stain, go for the Giemsa stain. to identify different types of cells which are involved in that particular inflammation. Then culture and sensitivity is very much helpful for we people for the and the proper treatment of the diarrhea in the field condition. Diarrheal sample examination, the fecal staining. So the things. So we are looking into that also. Now after doing the different things, how to interpret the fecal sample examination. So by the direct examination, we can able to identify the parasites which are causes the diarrhea, maybe the Haemonchus, maybe the tapeworm eggs, maybe the Balantridium coli, maybe Giardia, maybe the mites, maybe the fungus, maybe the crystals, maybe the protozoa. So with the simple examination of fecal matter, direct examination, with the simple examination of the direct fecal matter, we can able to identify these many numbers of the examples of the etiological factors, and it is very common. So these are the things which are very common in the field. Now, fecal staining. So after fecal staining, so the direct examination will give a result about the parasites, then the different parasite, maybe the roundworm, tapeworm, flukes, then the Balantridium coli, then the Giardia, mites, then the fungus, then the crystals, and protozoal infections. So protozoa in the sense the Cryptococcus and Eimeria. So both the things can be observed with the direct fecal sample examination. Now the same slide you can go for the staining. You can stain the slide with the gram stain. You will able to find the different gram positive or negative bacteria. Now if you are able to find the bacteria along with neutrophils, you can say the bacteria diarrhea is because of the bacterial origin. So here I am not saying that it is E. coli, it is Salmonella, it is the Proteus or nothing. I am saying just it is a simply bacterial type of diarrhea because there is presence of large number of neutrophils in the fecal matter. The simple thing is that once you observe fecal matter with the large number of neutrophils, we can shift our diagnosis towards that this is the bacterial type of origin. So accordingly, you can choose the antibiotics. Then viral diarrhea. So we are not able to demonstrate the virus in the staining, but we are able to demonstrate the lymphocytes. So just simply make a smear and stain that fecal matter with the Leishman stains. You will able to identify large number of lymphocytes, and that once we find the lymphocytes, we can say this is diarrhea of the lymphocytic origin. Now fungal. So we can go direct examination of the fecal matter. You will get the fungal segments. Fungal hyphae can be observed. Now the next tool. So after identification of the bacteria, we are come to conclusion that this is because of bacteria. Until we are not getting results, so it's better go for the culture and sensitivity. So the culture and sensitivity will at least very good result for the diarrhea and types of bacteria. So generally in field case, we are not interested in the identification of type of bacteria. Just we are much more concerned with the specific type of treatment and to control the diarrhea in the specific type of animals. So the type of bacteria is not of use to the we people, but the treatment is most specific, and we should go further that treatment and control the diarrhea. Now I will show the diarrhea and its sensitivity to different antibiotics. So same you can try at your own level. So the diarrhea in large animals because of E. coli, will having the watery type of diarrhea, little bit pulse spilling is there. And if you could see this type of bacteria, they are sensitive to the Ceftriaxone sulbactam. Here Ceftriaxone sulbactam, the more to the chloramphenicol, a little bit to the gentamicin, Ceftriaxone tazobactam, and more to the amikacin. So here we can choose some of the bacteria antibiotics which can control or treat the E. coli. So it is one example. You can see another example. In that case, you can see the amikacin, neomycin. Then the here the Ceftriaxone tazobactam is not working. The Ceftriaxone, sorry, ciprofloxacin is working. So like that, we can see there is a change into the sensitivity of the E. coli in the different situations. But as far as my knowledge, I will tell other things, or the things which are helpful we people at the field. Then CAP score. CAP score also having a different sensitivity. So ceftriaxone sulbactam here you can in the tazobactam, ceftriaxone sulbactam, cifoperazone tazobactam, cifoperazone sulbactam, then ceftriaxone amic acid. So you can these kind of things in CAP scores. Another picture of CAP score having the sensitivity to only the chloramphenicol, neomycin, and amic acid. So other antibiotics are of no use. So it's based on the things and the appropriate use of the antibiotics. Now, the fungal infection to the intestines can be observed because of the moldy type of feeds and the blackening, we can say. So, a small amount of toxins and the fungal spores can enter into the digestive tract. So, here you can see the storage, as I have discussed earlier. Again, you can see a lot of fungus has been observed into that corns. Now, after that, salmonellosis. Salmonella is having a disease type of, or the typical type of diarrhea, the watery diarrhea, the fecal smear examination. You will have the gram-negative bacteria and large number of neutrophils into that. And culture of the same thing will have these kind of things. So, amikacin, ceftriaxone tazobactam, ceftriaxone sulbactam, and the cifoperazone sulbactam. So, these are the things which can use in the field conditions. Now, after that, the similar type of infections here, you can see some of the salmonellas, they are sensitive to the chloramphenicol, amikacin, cifoperazone sulbactam, ceftriaxone sulbactam. Here you can see ceftriaxone sulbactam, ceftriaxone, and some of the moxifloxacin. Okay, so after looking towards the different types of diarrheal cases, and so final conclusions will come to the how to treat the diarrhea cases. Now, treatment for different types of bacterial antibiotics. Generally, ceftriaxone sulbactam. You can go for the ceftriaxone tazobactam, cifoperazone sulbactam, cifoperazone tazobactam, amikacin, chloramphenicol, gentamicin, halcuinol, and ceftriaxone. Okay, so this can be given whenever our routine treatment is not working. Generally, we are saying that the drug of choice for the GI tract infection is the sulfa drugs, but whenever the sulfa drugs are not working, you should think of this. So either you may go for the ceftriaxone sulbactam in combination with the halcuinol or in combination with the amikacin, it will give better results. So the combination of anything here, so all these four can be combined with the amikacin, can be combined with the gentamicin, can be combined with the halcuinol, can be combined with the chloramphenicol. So the first four and the second four can be combined together, but the last one, that is ceftriaxone, can be given singly. Now, but up till now, those things which has been not cured by the many medicines has been cured by the ceftriaxone. So that was my personal experience. So ceftriaxone has given a better result in the most of the cases whenever the all antibiotics generally fail. So you may go further ceftriaxone in some of the cases. Now, this is the treatment for bacteria. Now this is treatment for protozoa. Whenever the after the examination of fecal matter, if you are observing the Giardia is there, Balantidiums are there, so you should go for the combined treatment. Now for the Giardia and the Balantidium, we should go for the metronidazole, tinidazole, and oxytetracycline. So oxytetracycline at the dose rate of the 10 milligram per kg body weight, and for the coccidia, we should go amprolium at the dose rate 7 milligram per kg body weight. So for amprolium, for the coccidia, we should go for the treatment at the dose rate 7 milligram per kg body weight for 7 days. So this is most important. 7 days treatment should be there. So if the break is there to the amprolium treatment, it should repeat for the 7 days. So because as we know, the life cycle of the Eimeria is having the typical sense. For that purpose, we should go the treatment of the amprolium for the 7 days. Now, long-standing diarrhea, in the field cases, we are observing the long-standing diarrhea more than 2 to 3 months or more than that. So one of the possibility, so JD, you should rule out with the rectal pinch examination. You have to remove the rectal pinch, go for the gram staining. You can observe the typical gram positive rods into that. Now, if the beyond giving these things, so diarrhea persists for a long period, then you should go for the ceftriaxone, 2.5 gram intravenously, and maybe repeated after 48 hours. Now, those things has been not controlled by these things. You should go for the fecal sample examination, and if you find some intestinal mites, so I don't have picture right now with me. Intestinal mites will have the typical type of characteristics, and that can be response to the only diethyl carbamazine, and it should be given for 21 days. So diethyl carbamazine, 10 tablets twice a daily for 21 days in case of the large animals, it will give a better result. Along with the, you may go for the oxytetracycline bolus and the metronidazole, and a suitable antibiotic should be given to that animals, and you will get the result from that. Now, after that, the prevention of the diarrhea. So the basic thing is that management should be proper. 2 times feeding should be there. If want to change feed, go slowly. It should be slowly replaced. Then maintain the hygienic conditions of the feed and water. We should use the suitable water sanitizers. Then we should give advice to the farmers that cleaning of the equipment should be proper. Feeding utensils should be not proper. Then the prevention of SARA should be there. The SARA should be prevented by you giving the enzymes and buffers. Then managemental aspects. Sometimes we are giving or treating the animals, but after 3-4 days, again animals start diarrhea. So here I am giving one of the examples. Just yesterday I taken this kind of photographs. So this cattle was given treatment for 4 days. The cattle is okay, but after 6th day, animal owner again saying that cattle start diarrhea. So if we see its managemental aspect in that particular animal, you can see here is a sewage pipe is there. Sewage pipe of his home. Here you can see the latrine or the bathroom is there. Here toilet is there. So from that, there is a mixing of the 2 waters together, and that human is feeding this cattle on that particular space. So this is the source of contamination. So this grass and food material is get contaminated, and again there is a reinfection is occurred. So the thing is that we should give such type of advice to the farmers that either you can change the place of the feeding, or you can make some proper measure to the animal for the feeding. Then SARA. So after that, everybody knows the SARA. It's a Sebaceous ruminal acidosis, and how to prevent it. So for that SARA, we should go for a combination the enzymes buffers. Then the antibiotics which has been provided. You may go for the 4 gram. Then here the severe type of, or the all literature is available of the Rusept and Rusept S. Now Ruzyme Forte and Ruzyme Plain. So both can be used. Ruzyme Forte can be used for the typical SARA cases, and along with that antibiotics, you can give the Ruzyme Forte, and the plain Ruzyme can be given in the feed regularly, maybe at the 1.5 kg per ton of feed for the regular enzymes and the feed into that. Then you can go for the Hybex bolus. So as it is a unique combination of the all essential nutrients which are required to maintain the health of the liver as well as the health of the gut. So it is a symbiotic things, and it is having some blends of the binders which can remove the toxins from the ingest. Rusept S, Rusept, or the Ruzyme Forte and the Hybex bolus will be the good type of things which are responsive, or the which can help we people to control the diarrhea. With this, I will stop over here. I will give your questions, answer to your questions. So here you can contact Roots Bite is there, and no doubt for me here my number is there, WhatsApp number. You can send WhatsApp queries if unfortunately, something is happened over here. I may not be able to give answer to you people because the heavy rainfall is there outside the laboratory.
So there are some questions in the chat box.
Yes, I am going.
Okay, sir.
Yeah. Whitish diarrhea and CAP scores are both are same. Okay, white diarrhea. Yes, yes. White, we can say white diarrhea, but white diarrhea term is generally used in case of the birds. But in case of the large animals or the calf, we are getting the white diarrhea plus the pasty yellow type of diarrhea in case of calf, and that lead to the foul smelling. And the term, it's matter of term, but the you must we must understood what is the pathogenesis behind that. So the first thing is that the colostrum feeding should be there, and if the colostrum feeding is not there, ultimately that may lead to the CAP score and the white diarrhea in the animals. What is the best drug for the Balantridium coli? So oxytetracycline is the best drug for the Balantridium coli orally. It's not useful IV, but you can give orally. It will give better result. And for immature ampistomiasis and adult, so for the immature ampistomiasis, niclosamide is the only drug which can kill the immature ampistomes. Niclosamide. And for mature ampistomes, you can use the oxychlorogenide, then the rapoxinide, rapoxinide, and for immature ampistomes, we should go for the niclosamide only. No ivermectin, no chlorosulan will be useful on this. No any oxychlorogenide, but immature flukes ampistomes specifically will be killed by the niclosamide only. Okay, negative pressure is produced in the esophagus with the ruminoreticular grooves. Okay, so there is closing of ruminal grooves. If the reticular grooves are not get closed, then the bolus will not enter to the esophagus. So negative pressure to like a similar reaction to the omission, but it is not forceful omission. It is a physiological omission in the simple language we can say. So the negative pressure can be produced to remove or to throw the bolus from the rumen to the esophagus and from esophagus to the mouth. So with the help of ruminal closing of reticular grooves and the magnitude of the rumen will lead to the negative pressure, and that force bolus into the esophagus. From esophagus will lead to the or come to the mouth for the mastication. Maximum absorption of intestine is means it's depend upon which material is there. So minerals, then the proteins, carbohydrates, they are having their its own place for the absorption. The jejunum, it's amino acids, ileum also amino acids. So the most all three will be absorbed more in the ileum. Will you treat enteritis cases which don't recover after 3 days antidiarrheal drugs used in the field condition? So those drugs means I don't know what type of drugs here used, but you can use the ceftriaxone sulbactam, then the Ibex bolus together. And if the CAP score is there, you can use the ceftriaxone sulbactam along with the amikacin or gentamicin. You will get the better result. In the whitish diarrhea, in salmonella also, in the CAP score also. If the can we use the Ibex bolus in poisoning? Yes, one of the supportive treatment we can use Ibex bolus because it is having the blend of some toxin binders, so it will help, definitely help for the poisoning cases. But for acute poisoning cases, along with antidote, we should provide that this is the supportive treatment for the specific type of toxins. Can we use the atropine sulfate for the treatment of the diarrhea? Yes, we can use the treatment atropine sulfate for the treatment of diarrhea, but it can reduce the magnitude of the peristaltic moments of the intestinal tract. It will increase the absorption of water, but it will not treat the basic etiological factors. So, along with the typical type of treatment, maybe ceftriaxone sulbactam or the ciforadenant sulbactam or other antibiotics, along with atropine. If the when we are giving atropine sulfate, basically whenever there is a extensive diarrhea, watery diarrhea, and animal or the farmers are not able to collect that material, so that in that conditions, it is suggested to give atropine sulfate. But the intermittent or the little soft pieces, generally no atropine sulfate is advisable. We should go for the correction of the other things. Then, in case of severe diarrhea with the water mucus, in that case, definitely specific treatment. Yes, we can use the liver extract and herbs with the increased stability. Yes, we can. But the which kind of liver extract we are using, that is most important. If you are using with the raw liver extract, or the if it is not dried, then just go for the compatibility. I don't know exactly. You can just talk with me later on. We'll discuss on that. Silymarin can be given in the form of liquid or bolus. So silymarin is silymarin. So it will be acts as an active ingredient anywhere, either in the bolus or in the liquid. So it's depend upon the feasibility, availability, and how that animal is taking the material. So either you go for the bolus, you may go for the liquid. So it doesn't matter. But if you go with the Ibex bolus, you will get a additional benefit with that. And silymarin, you will get the other blends together. Okay, how to differentiate between the mixed infection, shooting diarrhea, and Jones disease? Shooting diarrhea. In case of Jones disease, the typical type of color of diarrhea is there. The pea soup type of diarrhea. Pea soup, the yellowish type of diarrhea is there. But other type of diarrhea, generally having their different type of colors. Then it's basic thing is that you should go for the rectal pinch examination. Just insert your hand, they take some rectal pinch or the deep portion of the large intestine. Take pinch of that. Go for the staining and may go for the culture. So you can differentiate upon that. But you should correlate Jones disease with the decreasing body condition. Whenever Jones disease is there, definitely the hide and bone or the hide and skin appearance is there, the wasting is there, and the diet of the animal particularly, it's very good. No disturbances is there, but the continuously progressive loss of condition is there. So that is the characteristic feature of the Jones disease. Now, shooting diarrhea, it generally was the we can say was the characteristic feature of the rinderpest. But nowadays we are saying that the rinderpest is not available over here. But other infective agents which can increase the magnitude of the intestines may lead to the shooting type of diarrhea. Maybe the bacteria, maybe the Balantidium, or maybe the Clostridium type of infections. So all these things may lead to the increased peristaltic moments and shooting type of diarrhea. But the fecal sample examination, fecal smear examination, fecal smear staining, and differential staining, and as well as the rectal pinch examination will help we people for the differentiating between the Jones disease. Can we use moss in the diarrhea? Yes, we can use the moss. Moss is a mannose oligosaccharides. So mannose oligosaccharides, which can use in the diarrhea. So that will lead to the medium for the development of the useful bacteria. We can say useful bacteria can produce within the moss, and they will cause competitive exclusion of the infective bacteria. So the colonies of the useful bacteria will be increased, and that may lead to the competitive exclusion of the bacteria which can cause diarrhea. Okay, we'll try to reschedule this kind of uh, diarrhea webinar. Just I will inquire from the organizer. So definitely, if they say yes, I don't have any problem. I can repeat the whole webinar, no problem in that. Do we need buffer for the opioid cases? Yes, definitely. Buffer actually correct the pH of the rumen, and once the rumen of pH of rumen is get corrected, most of the times the ruminal motility is stop and the animals become off feed. So it's better give buffers. Which drug should be used for the treatment of the gastro in dogs? So there are so many things because this is the not webinar for the dogs, but definitely either you may go for the amikacin, you may go for the gentamicin along with the ceftriaxone tazobactam, and the basic thing is that you should control the hemorrhages into the gastrointestinal tract by giving the hemostat injections. Along with that, you may go for the ceftriaxone sulbactam, ceftriaxone tazobactam. Definitely, we will get result from that. So the combination of ceftriaxone sulbactam, amikacin, ceftriaxone sulbactam, gentamicin, you may go for that, but you should monitor that case for the some abnormalities in the kidney dysfunction. Okay, generally non-veg is not recommended in liver damage cases. Then why the most of the liver tonics in vet have liver extract or liver fraction? It's a very good question because the this is for, not for human beings. This is for animal. The simple thing is that so as we people are consuming lot of meat, but I am not taking meat. Don't worry. But those people are taking a lot of non-veg. They generally not recommended to take non-veg more. But as you are saying, why liver fractions? So as it is liver fraction, it is an extract of liver, and which is having the more type of material. Maybe the amino acids are there, then the different vitamins are there, some fats are there, some of the B complexes are involved in that. So to rejoice or to give strength to the liver extract is generally used for the liver in the liver tonics, and it is another cheapest source, I can say, the cheapest source of the material for the preparation of liver tonics. That's why many of the companies, they are using the liver fractions in the liver tonics. But ideally, you may go for the liver tonics like a silymarin, which is having the actively liver protective activity, instead of going for the liver tonic. But that is the matter of the economics and everything. So it's better not to say any comment on that. But you can use the blend of both for the better result in the animals. How Ibex bolus will be helpful for the treat of the diarrhea. So in case of calf diarrhea. So in case of calf diarrhea, Ibex will help. To first thing is that it is having the moss, that is the mannose oligosaccharides. Then it's having the live yeast cultures. Then the yeast and the lactobacilli are there. They will cause competitive exclusion. So this is another thing. Then what are the toxins which are liberated during the inflammatory reaction, which will be adsorbed by the toxin binder which has been used in the Habex bolus. So all these things collectively call, or the collectively support to the your basic treatment of the diarrhea. So the Hypex bolus will be the one of the role of the supportive staff. We can say supportive staff to control the diarrhea in the intestine. So the along with the specific treatment, you should go for the diarrhea. But my opinion is that the diarrhea which occur because of the small quantity of the aflatoxin, mycotoxins, and little bit change in the feed, little bit change in the environment, the Hypex bolus will has given very good result in the controlling the diarrhea, but without giving any other antibiotics. I want to say without giving antibiotics. So, but the basic thing is that we should go for the specific diagnosis. So if there was no bacteria, there is no protozoa, nothing is there, but till diarrhea is there, in such cases, the Hypex bolus will give better result. But I will suggest you should go for the some specific treatment along with the Hypex bolus, and definitely you will have very good result of the Hypex bolus and the other antibiotics together. Can we use the Ruzyme for the better feed conversion? Yes, definitely you can use the Ruzyme plain at the dose rate 1.5 kg per ton of feed for the regular feeding in the animals. It gives very better result. And for the treating SARA and some other digestive disturbances, you can give the Ruzyme for the 5 days. Okay, so almost all questions has been covered by me. Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir. It's been a very informative webinar. Everyone found it informative and very useful. We wish to inform you this webinar will be posted on Roots Biotech YouTube channel shortly. If you have missed any of the previous webinars, you may take a look at the same at our YouTube channel. Thank you, everyone. We appreciate you being here. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Thank you very much.